Tia Taylor.
And I'm John Carrington. And you're watching National Spotlight on the National Great Blacks in Wax Museum. We're going to talk about Madam C.J. Walker.
Yes, she was really an interesting woman and truly a rags to riches story, way before her time.
Yes, and I'm proud of her because she's one of the first blacks to be successful in America to the degree that she got national recognition.
She truly did, and she was not only a wealthy woman with her business, but a true philanthropist and civil rights activist as well.
All right, well, we'll be right back with more on Madam C.J. Walker.
Entrepreneurial legacy. Not even her poor and difficult beginnings stymied Madam Walker's road to greatness. Born December 23, 1867, roughly 2 years after the alleged emancipation of her race, she was an orphan at 7, a wife at 14, a mother at 17, and a widow by 20. The woman who would become known as the first self-made female millionaire and the greatest benefactress of her race was born the daughter of Owen and Minerva Breedlove, poor ex-slaves living on a cotton farm in Louisiana. They named their special little girl Sarah Breedlove. A washerwoman by trade, at the age of 33 in 1900, Sarah began selling a product door to door which she had formulated to remedy her own hair loss. She pinpointed the root of her hair problems, which was the scalp, and created hair care products and a beauty regimen for hair growth and maintenance that focused on the need for a clean and healthy scalp, scalp protection, and scalp stimulation for maximum hair growth. Her first product would eventually be called Madam C.J. Walker's Wonderful Hair Grower, and she boldly and proudly used her own likeness on her jars and her own before and after pictures to demonstrate her product's effectiveness. Per Madam's own words, she abhorred the impression held by some that she claimed to straighten hair. She emphatically stated, "I grow hair," and that there would be no hair-growing business today had I not started it. She described her concept and method of hair growth as beauty culture because she compared growing hair to growing and cultivating garden plants. She then broadened this concept of beauty culture by incorporating the value of cleanliness and professionalism, which emphasized the overall appearance, moral conduct, and character of the black woman. Black women from all over the country began writing letters to Madam Walker attesting to the benefits of her products. By setting up a special correspondence course of beauty culture in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and then a manufacturing facility in Indiana, and later a beauty college in New York City, Madam was able to further establish and promulgate her program of beauty culture.
Welcome back, and we're talking about Madam C.J. Walker today and learning more about her life.
A wonderful story. I heard that she was married to a man who didn't have a lot of ambition, but she decided she wanted to move up north and make some things happen for her family. So he said, "I'll stay here, I'll work, and you go up north." She went up north, and she decided to buy a house, and she needed some money, so she started dabbling in the kitchen doing hair, doing things that created a look that made black women proud of their appearance. And Madam C.J. Walker developed the beauty industry in her kitchen. Well, when she started making money, the family wanted to move back up north with her. Isn't that always the case? If you ever hit $1 million, folks, trust me, you'll find family. No, excuse me, family will find you. And so that's what happened to Madam C.J. Walker. Out of her kitchen, she started creating all sorts of hair products that would help make women more beautiful. And lo and behold, she started generating customers and generating an audience. And next thing you know, Madam C.J. Walker became one of the first black millionaires. And she was a female. And what a wonderful example for all of us. Start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. And of course, Madam C.J. Walker is one of my idols. I
have to jump in here, John, because I don't see a lot going on up there. So I'm going to have to speak and say that she truly is one of my idols. As a black woman dealing with hair, I think I know a little bit about what Madam C.J. Walker started, because I truly have reaped the benefits from what she did over 100 years later. And I'm so grateful to her. Thank goodness she started some of the things she did. One of the things about Madam C.J. Walker, which she started out as Sarah Breedlove back in the Delta, Louisiana, was the fact that she was a washerwoman. And when she washed her hair, she had horrible flaky hair, and her hair was thinning from sweating and scrubbing on that wash. That really inspired her to create hair products, because a lot of African American women at the time, their hair was falling out, they weren't really caring for their hair properly, they worked hard jobs in the fields laboring. So she started selling some products for another company, but that inspired her to say, you know what, I think I can make better products. And she also thought to herself, how can I make a better living for myself? I can't hunch over this washboard for the rest of my life and make a living for my daughter. So that's when she decided to start creating some things in her kitchen, kind of playing around with some formulas and creating a process for black women to process their hair and wash and make their hair, look presentable, and also help it from falling out, because that was a big factor. She was suffering with thinning and falling out hair. And she started out really true rags to riches, though. I don't know if you know this, but her parents died when she was very young. She was living with her siblings, but she was married 3 times. And C.J. Walker was actually her 3rd husband, and she actually divorced him. So they were married for, I believe, 6 or 7 years or so, somewhere around there. So she maintained his name, sort of like Tina Turner. Mm-hmm. She kept C.J. Walker's name, and because that was the name that branded her business. But she really did create herself as a self-made millionaire, going from literally making 50 cents or $1 a week washing clothes in a bucket, to creating products, traveling not only in the United States, but the world. She traveled down to the Caribbean and South America, because they too had textured hair, helping women down there learn how to manage their hair.
All right. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, she owned property on the Hudson River in New York, and she was a part of the Harlem Renaissance, I understand.
She very much was, and that was towards the ending of her life. Mm-hmm. At that point, she had done a lot of work in the civil rights movement, because she was making so much money. And not only was she making money, the beauty of her was that she was empowering other black women. For the first time, black women were successful in making more money than they ever thought they could make, as servants, as washerwomen, and so forth. So she was not only creating a product for herself, but she was really dedicated to wanting to empower women and also make a better life for blacks, because of course at that time there was segregation and so forth going on. But she, during that time period, once she made her money, she moved to a mansion. She had a mansion built near the Rockefellers, and they were appalled because they thought, well, who is this maid that keeps looking at the house? But it wasn't a maid, it was her house. Mm-hmm. And she had that house built and decorated near the Hudson River.
Okay, yeah.
And was able to live there for, I believe, a year or so before she died. She died fairly young, at the young age of about 57, I believe she died, of high blood pressure.
I tell you, Madam C.J. Walker, one of the great role models for all of our young people who want somebody to aspire to be like. A woman who worked hard, very creative, and was bold enough to step out and do things to help people. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back with more of Spotlight on the Great Blacks and Wax Museum.
Beauty culture, which trained the black female in 3 areas. First, the black woman was taught the proper presentation of herself. She was to be clean, neat, properly attired, and well-mannered. Second, she was taught how to use Madam's hair care system on customers. And third, she was taught how to sell Madam's hair care products to customers. In so doing, Madam C.J. Walker provided a solution to the root of the black woman's demise. She raised the black woman's self-esteem and confidence about her own beauty and intelligence, and she empowered the black woman economically, thus freeing her from white servitude and male dependency. Madam Walker moved her ever-expanding special correspondence course business, founded on her system of beauty culture, to Indianapolis, Indiana, on February 19, 1910. She then purchased and paid for her home, adjoining which was a factory and laboratory located at 640 North West Street. She endeared herself to the citizens of Indianapolis when she contributed $1,000 to the establishment of the Senate Avenue YMCA. It is reported that she was the only woman to make such a donation. Madam herself, when referring to the YMCA donation, had this to say, quote, "In referring to that $1,000 gift, I don't want you to lay so much stress on it. And do not say that I am the only one. You might say that I was the first and caused others to awaken to the sense of their duty in helping deserving causes for the benefit of the race." End quote. Less than 2 years after moving to Indianapolis, on September 2, 1911, Madam C.J. Walker petitioned the Indiana Secretary of State to become incorporated, and on September 19, 1911, exactly 1 year and 7 months since her arrival in Indianapolis, the Madam C.J. Walker Manufacturing Company of Indiana Incorporated was established, Madam Walker naming herself president and owner of all 1,000 shares of stock. A relentless worker and ingenious marketer and saleswoman, Madam Walker had thought to place her system of hair care products in black colleges all across the United States. She also regularly advertised in black newspapers, and she eventually placed her products in drugstores. As she traveled throughout the country, she wrote letters to her general manager in order to instruct him on how best to run her factory in her absence and how to implement all of her new ideas. However, the Madam Walker agents, Madam's recruited sales force, were her biggest asset.
Hey, welcome back. And Tia, I heard that you're going to be playing the part of Madam C.J. Walker in a docudrama. What's going on with that?
Yeah, I'm really excited about that because C.J. Walker really is one of my idols. I've always been inspired by her, just knowing that she was one of the first black women to become a millionaire. So we're going to look at reenacting some of her life, telling some of her story from a true perspective of those different eras that she was in.
And you have some experiences in acting. Talk about your acting background.
I'm just really starting to get engaged with acting in the last year or so. So I've taken some classes, some workshops. I've been in a few plays. I've also been doing some things here with Spotlight and MDA Associates, working on different TV show hosts.
But you're so humble. What's your degree in?
My degree is in mass communications with a concentration in public relations. Mm-hmm. So it does lend itself well to acting and TV hosting and public speaking.
And so you have an outgoing personality. Now, what preparation are you making to be the character?
The main thing is knowing the background, knowing her history. So I've been getting as much information as I can about who she was, who she is, how she grew up, and just the different facets of her life. So I've been reading a lot of books and information online about that.
All right, and what about her dialect? Did she have the southern drawl from where she came, or did she develop and educate herself as she progressed in her?
It's interesting. I've been trying to find out more about what her dialect would be like. I haven't seen a whole lot about what her dialect would be, but what I do know is she really focused on education because she herself was not educated. The time she was growing up, blacks were not allowed to read or write. And then after the Civil War and segregation was ending, they were still very limited on what they could learn. They were really prohibited from learning from a lot of whites. So she made sure her daughter had an education, and she hired educated people and had them sort of teach her. So as she was growing her business, she was constantly learning. She always wanted to learn, and she always really impressed upon everyone else around her, make sure you get an education. She was truly the Oprah Winfrey of her time, if you will. And after she'd gotten herself really established with her business, she took that money and that notoriety that she had, and started working with civil rights activists like Booker T. Washington. And then when she moved to New York from Indianapolis, she had a factory in Indianapolis. And in Indianapolis, she gave a huge gift to the YMCA there. So it was a YMCA for black men. And then when she moved to New York, she started socializing with several of the Harlem Renaissance, Langston Hughes, and she even was friends with an opera singer from Italy. Whenever he came to the U.S., she would also entertain him as well in New York. So she was definitely around all the great Renaissance period.
Wow. And when you surround yourself with educated, cultured people, it tends to rub off on you.
It does.
And it's like my grandmother used to say, if you hang with rotten apples, don't be surprised if you get rotten. Spend enough time in the barber shop, you will get a haircut. So you put yourself in a position where you're with people who are of culture, and pretty soon it affects you.
And that's exactly what she did. So she herself, she learned so much and became an educated woman, through experience and through interaction and through connection. But she made a point to consistently learn as she was growing. Even, when she was 40 years old, she was still learning.
How would she dress? What would her attire be?
Well, as you can see from her statue in the Great Blacks and Wax Museum, she was very much a lady. She was very much into presenting herself in a fashion that was of high class. You want to represent yourself well, represent yourself and your race with the utmost of respect. And she was very, very focused on doing that.
All right, and I'm sure when she threw those big parties on the Hudson, she had Southern cuisine.
I'm sure she did. I'm sure she did. And one of the things I read about in my research was that towards the later years of her life, she was supposed to eat better and eat healthier because she was doing a lot of entertaining and a lot of traveling. And as you well know, sometimes our cuisine is not always the healthiest of cuisines with the fat and things like that in it. So she was being encouraged by her doctors to cut back on that because she had high blood pressure. But because she was an entertainer, she did like having plenty of that type of food around, the Southern cuisine.
Curious. Let's get back to the docudrama. What will that be about?
Well, we're going to focus on different aspects of her life, the different segments from when she was poor and then as she continued to grow into the business. We'll also like to hopefully get an interview with her granddaughter, her great-great-granddaughter, I should say, who will be able to talk to and get her experience as she's learned the family legacy through word of mouth. And she's written a book and has done quite a bit of research on her. And her great-great-granddaughter is Alilia Bundles, and she's written a book on her own ground, which is the story of Madam C.J. Walker.
Well, that's wonderful. You'll have a chance to interview a real descendant of a great woman. That's terrific.
That is great.
We're going to be right back after this break. Don't go anywhere. Don't touch that remote.
Madam held public meetings in churches, rented lodge halls and other such facilities, and put on demonstrations, including a slide presentation, in order to recruit black women to become Walker agents. Madam Walker taught and trained them in the methods of application and proper use of her hair oils and vegetable shampoo. Eventually, Madam organized a national convention for her Walker agents, giving away prizes and other incentives to motivate and energize her ever-growing troops of Walker agents. Sales generated from Madam Walker's manufacturing company and the hair care products it produced enabled Madam to give birth to yet another legacy, as Madam became known as the greatest benefactress of her race. Through monies earned and derived from Madam's work in the hair-growing business, Madam Walker regularly donated large sums of money to charity and to individuals of her race who were in need. In fact, Madam was so self-sacrificing and freely giving that those closest to her were worried that she would become financially ruined. She traversed the country, speaking against lynchings, and fought vehemently for the fair treatment of black soldiers who had served in America's military during World War I. Madam C.J. Walker was an ambassador of sorts, a spokesperson for all black-skinned people, a revolutionary, visionary, missionary force. It should therefore be quite obvious that Madam Walker's passing on May 25, 1919, was a tremendous loss to the black race. At that time, Madam had recruited over 25,000 black women from the United States, Central America, and the Caribbean as door-to-door beauty culturists, and was well on her way to Africa. Her net worth was over $1 million, making her the first female, regardless of color, to become a self-made millionaire. She is one of the most successful black entrepreneurs of all time, and one of the first to utilize the method known today as direct sales marketing to distribute her products. She had also managed to build a 32-room mansion in Irvington, New York called Villa Lawaro, which she had desired to be left as a monument to her name and as an example to her race of what hard work and black support of black enterprises could achieve. After Madam's 1919 passing, her hair care manufacturing corporation was used as collateral to secure the finances needed to build what is today known as the Madam Walker Theater Building. Completed in late 1927, the Walker Building Beauty Salon continues to operate there and continues to sell Madam C.J. Walker's original hair care products. Years later, in 1982, the trustees of Madam Walker's Trust would deposit a large portion of Madam C.J. Walker Manufacturing Company's business records, historical documents, pictures, and memorabilia with the Indiana Historical Society, who took on the task of painstakingly organizing and preserving the Madam Walker legacy. 74 years after the incorporation of the Madam Walker Company in 1985, the 1,000 shares of capital stock of Madam's corporation were sold to a man named Raymond L. Randolph, making him the first person since Madam Walker herself to own all 1,000 shares of stock in the original Madam Walker Company. A graduate of Attucks High School, Mr. Randolph had never dreamed that he would become the owner and caretaker of this phenomenal legacy. In honor of Madam C.J. Walker, Mr. Randolph placed Madam Walker's image back on the jars of her original hair care products with the words "Since 1911" placed underneath it.
Welcome back to Spotlight, and I'd like to talk a little bit more about Madam C.J. Walker, John, and now I'd like to talk a little bit about her civil rights activism. Some people don't know how instrumental she was in the civil rights movement and how serious she was about really wanting to advance her people. She was a member of the NAACP. She supported the YMCA in Indianapolis because the YMCAs at that time would not accept black men. So she actually made a $1,000 pledge, which was a huge amount of money at that time, to build the YMCA in Indianapolis. Yeah, she did a lot in terms of forwarding the advancement of colored people at that time. And one of the things that she also did was try to support blacks joining the military and fighting in World War I. They were very resistant to that at the time because, as you know, they had very little rights. We had very little rights in that time period, late 1800s, early 1900s. But she really encouraged them that if you fight hard for your country will support you. However, that wasn't always the case, but she truly believed that if blacks did the right thing and supported the country in the wars, that the country would support them, and she did believe that. And soldiers, because of her and her speeches at different camps, signed up for the military and wrote her letters afterwards saying, "We were inspired to be here because we heard you speak."
Wow, and the politics of that era were really, really, really weird. And when you think about our army that won't allow black men to carry rifles and guns, we had to stay in the back and cook and do the cleaning and the logistical things. And I remember during the World War I, there was a group of people called the Big Red One. They were actually the truck drivers that drove ammunition and food and supplies to General Patton as he marched forward trying to retake the land that the Nazis held. And it was just amazing that we had to have our own little Air Force, the Tuskegee Airmen, in order to fight in the air war. And these little political things were very prominent in Madam C.J. Walker's era.
They were, and a lot of people didn't know about that.
All right, well, the Tuskegee Airmen display, that's a good exhibit at the National Great Blacks in Wax Museum. They make me proud. I'm proud of all of the statues and the people that they represent.
It's true. And I think that some of the things that she worked on as she worked on civil rights, she was very, very into the arts as well, as you mentioned, the Harlem Renaissance period. So she felt it was important. And Madam C.J. Walker not only wanted to live that civil rights activism and support that for herself, but she instilled that within her sales force. So all of her saleswomen across the nation, she encouraged them to give back to their communities, support civil rights, and be philanthropists, support their churches, support their community centers. She really wanted that to be a part of her business. So it's not just about making money, but it's about building a community as well.
Yeah, sometimes you don't need more employees, you need better employees. So she trained them to be better employees.
Exactly.
All right, well, that's how you become a success in America. Learn from our past. Learn from those folks who've gone before and laid a foundation. And you know something, Tia? That's why everybody should visit the National Great Blacks in Wax Museum. The Great Blacks in Wax Museum is a signpost, and there are various signposts in that museum that'll show you where you can go and who you can copy off of to become the success that you want to be in your life. They're good examples, they're role models. Madam C.J. Walker is one of them. Visit the National Great Blacks in Wax Museum and get the directions and signposts that'll lead you to success.
I agree. And that was a great bit of information there today, John. We're going to cut right now to another clip, and we'll be right back.
Doing business today as Madam C.J. Walker Enterprises Incorporated, the hair care company founded by Madam C.J. Walker continues to manufacture and sell her original quality products, ensuring that the legacy of this remarkable woman never dies. The Madam Walker Agent Program has been reinstituted and is the main method by which her products are distributed today. On September 24, 2011, Madam C.J. Walker Enterprises sponsored a centennial celebratory walk called Tracing the Footsteps of a Legacy. This event marked the 100th year since the pivotal point in her entrepreneurial legacy when Madam Walker incorporated her manufacturing company, the Madam C.J. Walker business family, which includes the Madam Walker agents, will continue to keep Madam Walker's spirit alive and well by ensuring that her labor of love, her manufacturing business, continues operating according to the entrepreneurial blueprint she left behind and which is detailed in the historical documents of the company. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah Breedlove. You are indeed one in a million.
All right, well, I'm John Carrington.
And I'm Tia Taylor, and we were so happy to present you Spotlight on Blacks in Wax today. It's such a great museum, John, that I think you can learn so much from your past to take you to where you are today and to continue moving yourself forward.
It's inspirational and motivational. I just love visiting here, and I think everybody should treat yourself to a visit to the National Great Blacks in Wax Museum. Until next time, I want to see each and every one of you here at the National Great Blacks in Wax Museum, and I want to see you back here on this channel this time to watch us on Spotlight on the National Great Blacks in Wax Museum. Bye-bye.
Bye.